Hello everyone, this is Akshay Trimukhe. We are going to start with an important topic of embryology, that is pharyngeal arches and pouches. So, pharyngeal arches and pouches are very important to be known because these are going to give rise to your important structures of head and neck. So let us start with this important topic of today, pharyngeal arches and pouches. Just start up with the video. So just focus on this, what you can say, on this image. It's a human embryo. This human embryo shows some prominent features or prominent structures. This is your head, where head bulge, where your brain is developing. This is your pericardium bulge, where your heart is developing. This is umbilicus. This is your head region. And very important part over here, which we are going to focus today on, that is your cervical part, where you can see this rod-like structures or ring-like structures. These are your pharyngeal arches. Your pouches are not visible, that we are going to see in the future afterwards, after some time, because when we take a cut section, then you will get to know what are pouches exactly. Okay, so these are your pharyngeal arches. Now what are pharyngeal arches exactly? Like, define pharyngeal arches. So pharyngeal arches are rod-like thickening of mesoderm present in the wall of foregut. So just start with this video. What this definition means, whiteboard lecture. Okay, pharyngeal arches are rod-like thickening of mesoderm present in the wall of foregut. So when you make pharyngeal arches, now basically there are, first of all, 6 pharyngeal arches, but out of the 6, the 5th arch disappears when 6 arches are formed. The number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, when these 6 arches are formed, when it is formed, immediately the 5th arch disappears. So just we are left out with 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 6th arch. That is total 5 arches. That is arch number 1, 2, 3, 4 and 6th arch. The first arch is called as your mandibular arch. Second arch is called as your hyoid arch. Okay. So when you see the arches 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So this arches, let me make a diagram. Okay, so these are your pharyngeal arches. Same you can see on the other side. 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll number them, that is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 6, because the 5th one is not there, because it gets disappeared as it is immediately formed. Okay, so these are your 5 arches. These 5 arches basically are made from 3 germ layers, that is your ectoderm, endoderm and mesoderm. So where is your ectoderm exactly present, mesoderm present and your endoderm present? So the green marker which I am using, that is your ectoderm, the wall, that is the external wall that is made up of ectoderm. Same here, that is made up of your ectoderm. The inner wall is made up of your endoderm, which I am marking with blue. And the middle area or the middle part, which is red dotted, that is your mesoderm. So as our definition says, pharyngeal arches are rod-like thickening of mesoderm present in the wall of foregut. So this is your foregut. When you see an embryo with your this is your foregut developing. This is your head bulge, pericardium bulge, umbilicus, tail and your cervical region where your arches are developing. Okay, so this is your foregut. So this foregut is actually this linings present on the wall of your foregut, or actually basically this foregut is made up of, or the wall is made up of by your pharyngeal arches, and indeed these arches are made up of your mesodermal thickenings, because these are your what you can say, the major part is the mesoderm. So the internal or the pharyngeal part or the pharynx, which it is always lined by, or the floor is made up of your always by an endodermal layer. The external wall is made up of your ectodermal layer, and the middle, the main part, is made up of your mesoderm. So when we see at this diagram, you should also know about a very important membrane, that is buccopharyngeal membrane. So imagine this is your primitive oral cavity and this is your GI tract or primitive GI tract. Now this, both cavities are not communicating at your embryological, or you can say at very young age of your very young age of the embryo. So this membrane is called as a buccopharyngeal membrane. This buccopharyngeal membrane ruptures at the age of 4th week, that is 4th week of embryological development. This buccopharyngeal membrane ruptures, and this buccopharyngeal membrane is basically made up of two germ layers, that is made up of two germ layers, that is your ectoderm and your endoderm. So when you will make a buccopharyngeal membrane, you will make it like this. It's your green ectoderm and your blue endoderm. Okay, so like this your, or you can say, buccopharyngeal membrane is made. So this was something about the embryo, the pharyngeal arches. Okay, so let us get into more detail. These are the pharyngeal arches, and now this inner, or you can say inner clefts, this invagination, these are called as invaginations. These invaginations are called as your pharyngeal invaginations, and the evaginations, this is invagination and this is evagination, and these evaginations are called as your pharyngeal pouches. So now you are clear with the idea that these evaginations are called as your pharyngeal pouches. So there are first, second, third, fourth, and one extra, fifth one. There is 5 pouches, and 5 pouches and 5 arches with that. Okay, so these are your arches and something about arches and pouches. Now we'll erase this buccopharyngeal membrane. Okay, now when you look at one pharyngeal arch, always a pharyngeal arch is associated with the artery, with a nerve, a skeletal system, or you can say a cartilage, and I'll make muscles with blue, and a muscle. So a pharyngeal arch is always associated with an artery, with a vein, with a cartilage, and with, what you can say, muscles. Okay, so this was something about pharyngeal arch. Now we are just going to see in detail, just focus on this diagram, what each arches and each pouches are going to make. So okay, now just focus on this first cleft and your first pouch. This membrane, the external, what you can say, the ectodermal membrane and the endodermal membrane in vertebrates or higher animals, or like in humans, this both comes closer to each other. This both membranes come closer to each other. It looks like somewhat like this. Okay, so this is your first arch, second arch, and the both of your membranes. So this membrane is very important, and this membrane is called as your tympanic membrane of your ear. Tympanic membrane. The ectodermal and the endodermal layer comes closer to each other to form a very thin membrane. This membrane is called as your tympanic membrane, and the area outside or external to this is your external acoustic meatus, or you can call it as external auditory meatus, and this is your middle ear. This is your middle ear, this is your external acoustic meatus, and this is your tympanic membrane. And a very important structure derives from your first pouch, that is called as your eustachian tube, or you can call it also as auditory tube or pharyngotympanic tube. So this tube actually is derived from your first pouch, and it makes a connection between your middle ear. This is your middle ear portion, middle ear, and your nasopharynx, because here is your floor of pharynx. This is your pharynx. So the pharynx is also divided into nasopharynx, oropharynx, laryngopharynx. So similarly, this middle ear cavity or the middle ear is connecting via this eustachian or auditory or pharyngotympanic tube to the oropharynx of your what you can say embryo. And later on, you can when you see internal structure of ear, you will notice that the middle ear is actually connected via this tube. This is very significant. You can call it as eustachian tube. This eustachian tube connects your nasopharynx and your middle ear cavity. Okay. Now let me erase this. Moving further. Okay. When you see this second arch, the external, or you can say this second arch develops more further and downward, and it actually encircles the other arches, or you can say it covers the other arches, and this is actually again the mesodermal part of your arch. So this is your second arch, which moves downwards and develops further. So this is going to give rise to an important muscle, that is your platysma muscle. So that muscle is muscle of facial expression. So second arch gives one of the important muscle, that is called as your platysma muscle, that is muscles of facial expression. Now some of the other muscle we have talked about your external and middle ear. So first arch is responsible for one of the important muscle of ear, that is your tensor tympani muscle, and second arch give rise to stapedius muscle. Okay, there are other muscles also we are going to see in detail, but here these are some special muscles, or you can say some special structures which we are going to discuss in detail while their embryological development. So this was about your first arch and second arch, and about your first pouch. So like first arch is going to give one muscle, that is your tensor tympani, and second arch is going to give your stapedius muscle. Now be sure, or always be careful, like we'll see about the nerve which is innervating these all arches. The first arch is always innervated by mandibular branch of your trigeminal nerve. The second arch is innervated by your facial nerve. The third arch is innervated by your glossopharyngeal nerve. The fourth arch is innervated by your the superior laryngeal branch of your vagus nerve, and the sixth arch, it is not the fifth, it is the sixth arch, because the fifth one disappears. The sixth arch is supplied by your recurrent branch of your vagus nerve, recurrent laryngeal branch of your vagus nerve. So always the muscle which is derived from the first arch, that is the arch, first arch is also known as your mandibular arch, and second arch is called as your hyoid arch. Okay, so the first arch is going to give rise to a muscle, that is tensor tympani, and the second arch is giving rise to stapedius, which is your ear muscles. And these muscles, like though it is forming a single ear, but then these both muscles have different innervations because they have been derived from different arches or pharyngeal arches. So therefore tensor tympani will be innervated by your mandibular branch of your trigeminal nerve, and stapedius muscle will be innervated by your facial nerve. And so as your platysma muscle, because it is derived from your second arch, that's why it is innervated by your facial nerve. Okay. Now again we are moving to second pouch now. Just enlisting, second pouch is going to give rise to your tonsils. This second pouch will give rise to your tonsils. Now very important, third and the fourth. Third pouch is going to give rise to inferior parathyroid glands. Parathyroid gland, but the inferior parathyroid gland. Remember that these mesodermal cells also contains, or the mesodermal layer also contains, some neural crest cells, and these neural crest cells are highly mobile. These neural crest cells of the third pouch, or you can say the third pouch, these migrates downwards to form what you can say the first the lower parathyroid gland, and the fourth pouch will form your superior parathyroid gland. So when you see your thyroid gland, this thyroid gland contains parathyroid gland on it. So both of the superior parathyroid gland is derived from your fourth pouch, and the inferior parathyroid gland are derived from your third pouch. And very important other structure from the third pouch that derives is your thymus gland. So thymus gland is derived from your third pouch. Now let us see what structure is derived from the fifth pouch. Fifth pouch is also known as ultimobranchial pouch because it forms the ultimobranchial body. This ultimobranchial body is actually responsible for your parafollicular cells or C cells, which secretes calcitonin, and that is found in your thyroid gland. So we have finished with the pouches, first, second, third, fourth and fifth. Now we are going to see in detail for the first, second, third and fourth arch, that is the structures which are derived from first arch, second arch, third arch, fourth arch and the sixth arch. Though I am calling it as fifth arch, but it is understood it is just numbered fifth, but it is actually the sixth arch because the fifth one gets disappeared as it is formed. Okay, let me clear it. So let us discuss the first arch. Now we are going to discuss the arch under what you can say nerve, what nerve it is been innervated by, then what artery it is innervated it is supplied by, and which muscle, and lastly the skeletal or the cartilage part which is derived from your neural crest cells. Okay, so about first arch. First arch is derived from first arch will have your mandibular branch of your trigeminal nerve. Then the artery is your arch of aorta, that is the arch of aorta is going to be derived from this part. Some of the part of arch of aorta, not entire arch of aorta. Then your muscles, very important, all the muscles of mastications are derived from your first arch, or you can say mandibular arch. This is all the muscles of your mastication, that is your temporalis, masseter, lateral pterygoid, middle pterygoid. These are the four muscles, and the four other extra accessory muscles, that is anterior belly of digastric, then mylohyoid, then tensor tympani, which we have just spoken about, and tensor, villi, palatini. Okay, so these were the muscles of mastication, anterior belly of digastric, mylohyoid, tensor tympani and tensor villi palatini. Now the skeletal part, or you can say the cartilage part, whichever it is derived from the neural crest cells, these are the maxilla, mandible, incus and malleus. These are the bones of your ear. So these are the structures which are derived from your first branchial arch, or you can say mandibular arch, and it is always associated with a cartilage that is called as your Meckel's cartilage. The maxilla, mandible, these are all formed by your Meckel's cartilage. Okay, now we'll focus on the second arch. Again, the second arch is supplied by your, or innervated by your facial nerve, as we have said before. Then again, arch of aorta, some part of arch of aorta is formed from second branchial arch. Then muscles which are very important, like facial muscles of facial expression, all the facial muscles or muscles of facial expression. Then posterior belly of digastric, stylohyoid muscle, and stapedius muscle. And this stapedius muscle also we have discussed few minutes before, when we had studied the middle ear and external acoustic meatus in that auditory tube, the stapedius muscle, which is supplied by your facial nerve. So all the muscles of facial expression, posterior belly of digastric, stylohyoid muscle, stapedius muscle, it is derived from your second branchial arch and it is supplied by your facial nerve. And the skeletal, or you can say cartilage part, that is that forms stapes muscle, what you can say, bone, stapes bone. Then styloid process, lesser horn, and upper body of your hyoid bone. It is also called as your hyoid branch, or arch, not branch, hyoid arch. So the styloid process, then lesser horn and upper part of your hyoid bone is formed by this second arch, and it is always associated with the Richard's cartilage. We have done with the second arch. Now moving to third. Again, third arch is supplied by a glossopharyngeal nerve. Then the artery, specifically it is going to give rise to your right and left common carotid arteries, right and left internal carotid artery. So right and left common carotid artery as well as internal carotid artery. Then muscles which are going to be derived from the third arch is your only muscle, that is your stylopharyngeus muscle, and the last skeletal and cartilage part which is derived is greater horn and lower part of your hyoid bone. Previously we have seen lesser horn and upper part. Over here now you are going to see greater and lower part of your hyoid bone. So we have done with the third arch also. Now fourth arch. Fourth arch is supplied by superior laryngeal branch of your vagus nerve, that is your 10th nerve, 10th cranial nerve. Superior laryngeal branch of your vagus nerve, and it is concerned with the development of right subclavian artery. Right subclavian artery. Then muscles that are derived are cricothyroid, very important muscle, again muscle of larynx, cricothyroid. Then muscles, all the muscles of soft palate, muscles of soft palate, and pharynx, muscles of pharynx. So cricothyroid, muscles of soft palate, muscles of pharynx, and lastly thyroid cartilage, that is skeleton or thyroid part. It's going to give rise to your thyroid cartilage of your larynx. And now lastly, the sixth arch, which is supplied by your recurrent laryngeal branch of your vagus nerve, and it is going to form right and left pulmonary artery and ductus arteriosus. Right and left pulmonary artery and ductus arteriosus. So all the intrinsic muscles of larynx except cricothyroid are formed by your sixth arch, that is intrinsic muscle of larynx. All the intrinsic muscle of larynx are formed by your sixth arch except cricothyroid, because cricothyroid is formed by a fourth arch, and all other laryngeal cartilages like arytenoid cartilage, then your cricothyroid cartilage, and epiglottis, other cartilages of your larynx are formed by your sixth arch. So with this we end with our lecture on pharyngeal arches and pouches. I hope so that you have enjoyed this lecture. So let us meet other time with some new other interesting topics. Thank you.